all been asked and answered. But just to reiterate some of the things that I said last week, is that we have some specific questions, let's say concerns, about the UDO. We put it out in a letter, so I think you've received an explanation. But essentially it's this point. When Wabash Valley Resources purchased this plant, and Duke was about to close it and demolish it. That was in 2016. So they worked with the federal government to receive 2 injection well permits. These are Class 6. Process. So the federal government has given us these 2 permits. We've also gone to the state about the use of state authority. That was another 3-year effort to go to the legislature. So these things have been permitted by the federal government and the state government. So when we come here, we raise questions about whether the county can regulate on top of the federal government's permit or the state's authority. So that's why I asked last time. You look at your history of all the times you've regulated injection wells, which there are several in this county. Or when you've regulated pipelines or other types of utilities. Well, the fact is you haven't got any experience in this because you don't have the authority. So that's as nicely put as I can say it. Now, I've got Paul Stockman here as the general counsel. He wrote that letter that explained, where the limitations of authority are to regulate federal permits or state authorities. So I'd like Paul to come and at least give you a little bit of that. And if you have questions, I think your own attorney can answer some of them. But we did put it in writing. We're prepared to defend the authority that we've received from both the federal government and the state. People said last time that it sounded like a threat. I am a lawyer, and since you've got a lawyer, I think it's professional courtesy to give a notice that we would be required to challenge the UDO in the event that you try to regulate federal and state authority. So it's not I know it sounds like a threat, but it's actually a notice. It's kind of the responsibility among lawyers to give fair notice to people. There's no surprise here. We've got a lot of investors. We've got the support of the federal and the state government. So we're not in a position to just say, we'll just watch if you want to try to regulate those authorities that we've been granted. So I'm trying to say it as nicely as I can, but I do have a lawyer here that can explain it more in detail. Order. Okay. So if you would like, I would have him.
Sure. Have him
present.
I'll let your cue.
Ask you all to listen up, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. As Greg said, I'm Paul Stockman. I'm a lawyer for Pittsburgh who is the outside general counsel for Wabash Valley Resources. I really don't have a lot to add to what Greg has said, but I think I want to make it clear as a matter of emphasis that we have no desire to be in an adversarial position with the county. Our goal is to work with the county and come up with the best possible solution that respects everyone's rights and prerogatives. The concern we have with the UDO and sections 524 C, D, and E in particular, I've set out at length in a letter. I'm not going to take time and effort today to go through it all, but as Greg pointed out, there are I think at a minimum serious questions about the constitutionality of those provisions of the UDO and serious questions about whether they would be preempted by principles of state and federal law. And as I said, we want to work with the county, But, I mean, this is a $2.5 billion project. It's going to employ 500 people. That this is not a situation where we can allow effectively a heckler's veto to torpedo a project that's going to have environmental, social, economic benefits for Vigo and Vermilion counties, and frankly for all of the farmers in Indiana and in the Eastern Corn Belt, by providing a source of affordable, secure anhydrous fertilizer. I am happy to talk with your council about this. I'm happy to answer any questions that the three of you have about our position here. But at the end of the day, we would simply urge that the commission exercise its authority under the relevant provisions of the Indiana zoning code and strike out those three subsections.
Could you address the constitutionality of how the legislature was able to cite just Vigo County and Vermilion County out of the 92 counties to allow this to bypass our area planning?
Yes.
So what you're asking is basically the constitutionality of the law that established the pilot project?
I guess that would be a fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty straightforward exercise of state authority. The General Assembly on a number of occasions has authorized pilot projects, and that was the specific goal of Indiana Code 1439-1 3.5 in establishing a pilot project to demonstrate the suitability of carbon capture and sequestration at scale in Indiana. There was just a conference in Indianapolis last week that talked about it. Indiana is uniquely situated among the states to support a robust carbon capture and sequestration industry because it's got super good geology. It's got thick, deep carbonate formations that are beneath, thick layers of impervious cap rock that are ideally situated for carbon capture. And so one of the purposes that the General Assembly wanted to achieve was to show the world that Indiana is the place to go if you want to have a carbon neutral or carbon negative manufacturing operation.
Order.
So effectively, you're saying that the constitutionality of this program can be put aside because the state can declare a pilot program and cite specific, I guess it's not even the areas, it's counties. Out of the 92, they can't apply it to the whole state, but they can apply it to any one county.
Well, there's
or any subdivision of any county for that matter?
Yes, and there is a separate provision in the code that deals with facilities other than the pilot project that has some different rules.
This one in particular.
Yeah. No, we have no concerns about the validity of that statute, and I think talking about constitutionality, I think there are broader federal constitutional issues with these sections of the UDO, as we put out in the letter, that the through sections 524 C, D, and E, the Area Plan Commission is essentially attempting to make factual findings that the General Assembly and that EPA have already made in a way that violates due process of law.
And because this is contained within the state of Indiana entirely, how does federal law come into play?
Federal law, under the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, the laws of the United States are the supreme law of the land, state laws notwithstanding. So, in the game of sort of constitutional or legal rock, paper, scissors, the feds trump the state and the state trumps municipalities.
Within limits.
Within limits, yes.
Thank you.
I think there's been an overall trend that's going on to take away local rights, especially in local government. A couple years ago, we had an issue come up with the state came in and tried to take away local zoning rights for wind and solar. It was a very nasty fight. we as county commissioners fought that and defeated that bill. Very simple, because the local level knows what's best. And when it comes from the top down, it's not always what's best for the community. And we as a county, we represent these people in all the county. And we seem like that, in my opinion, and what I think is fact, that there's been a trend of overreach into people's personal rights and the rights of local government. And like I said, it didn't work the first time they tried it with the wind and solar, and we feed it back. But then this situation came up, and I think, talk with representatives, I think they was misled. For a very simple fact. I'm probably the only person you ever talked to that has been involved in injection wells. I've overseen 3 of them for about 3 or 4 years. But the problem we have is they was told, from talking to other legal representations in the State House, that they was told that there was 5,000 of these same wells in the state of Indiana. That's false.
These will be the first 2 carbon dioxide injection wells, but
I'm just trying to make a point that what was told by local representation to the State House, and that was sold to the state, they said there was 5,000 like these, and that came from Alan Morrison when I talked to him.
But
he told me that, and I told him that's impossible. These wells have different depths, and they're much larger and they're much deeper, and you can say all these injection wells for collecting oil, they inject some type of fluid in there to create something. They can be considered injection wells, but nothing this size. And so I think that when you really go back and you ask the House reps and people in the Senate and talk to them about this and say, why did you pass this? And they said, well, there's 5,000 of these already existing in the state of Indiana, which to me, and which to anyone of logical common sense would say, that's not true. So I think that the problem we had is it was sold down the road to our state representatives in a way that they thought, oh, it's everybody else got these. And that was a false statement, very misleading. And I have a real problem with that. I have a problem with the state of Indiana increasing their control of local government. No one knows local government better than the people that represent the people at the lowest level. And I don't see that. And if I would see a tremendous value coming into our county, if we'd been in negotiation or something that said, we're going to provide X amount of revenue of some type of royalties, and if there'd been something more conversations with the people. I think number one thing is, if you're going to do something in our county, you got to talk to the people. You don't talk to the representation first. You talk to the people. You vet it. You talk to the people. You find out what they want, what they think. And I think when you run over people, and I think this is what's going on, and you said it, you made very firm mention of it, that this decision is not ours, and you said you're willing and you will enforce whatever action it takes to tell us that you're going to do it. And that don't sell with anybody. If they came into your backyard or something was going on, I know that in your mind you would feel violated and you'd feel like your personal rights would be taken away. And that's where I think is where we're at right here. I don't think it's been vetted right. I don't think it's been discussed right. I think it's been jammed down our throats. And when something like that happens, it just, to be American, you don't accept them things. You stand up for what's right. You stand up for your own rights. And I'm not saying that as a threat. I'm just saying, from your standpoint, with federal and the state, you got the 2 big players there, and here we are. You're saying we're helpless and we're gonna do this, and you have no recourse, and that's just, it's hard for people to accept, and I think most people won't accept it. But I think that this whole issue has been sold down the road in a lower level, not full exposure to people, which is poor government, it's poor business, and I think that these people here feel like they've been violated, and then we as a county, I think that to accept this as we as a county will become a dump ground for the federal government and for the state, and not really have large amounts of the people being compensated and the government and the county being compensated. And I feel like we're being violated. It really bothers me. To stand up for the people is number one thing. As an elected official, you represent the people. And I know Greg from years ago when he was a state attorney, he did a great job on that level. But here we have a situation that I don't feel comfortable with, and I can't say where I'm at on this, but I do not agree with the procedure that was done. I don't agree with overreaching government. There's very few people that loves government, and wants the overreach of government. And we as a county we're individuals, and we value our rights. We value our property rights. We value the things we hold dear. But now you have the federal government overseeing the state, and the state overseeing us as a county, and it's like saying, you gave us the ultimatum, and you told us if we don't do this, you're going to sue us. I mean, you just might as well say it. It's just fact of the matter. So, but I think there has to be some stopping point somewhere for the federal government and the state overreaching our personal rights. And another thing I think about is, we're going to have a change of administration, possibly a change of administration tomorrow. I mean, the first of the year, if we have a different change from the federal level. And all these programs we have here are, you got to admit, they're federal funded. If you don't got the federal funding, it ain't going to happen. Am I right? Am I right? So that could change somewhat, in some of this stuff, even though it's already been going on. And I just, like I said, I'm at lost for words, but yet I've said a lot. I always will stand up for property rights and the rights of people, and I think that the property rights have been violated.
Well, you certainly raised important points, but unfortunately they're above our pay grade.
I might at least respond. I spent a good number of years representing the state, and that was the job, is to represent the state's authority. And I was heard many times to sue the federal government, challenging whether they were infringing on the state's authority. But I also spent 3 years on these types of meetings with commissioners who didn't want us to build I-69 to Evansville. It was not a pretty process. The people who showed up were just like your group here, the ones who might be watching online, who aren't going to come and be part of this, but they may say, this is something that we would like to know more about. But the people that I spoke to in the counties to Evansville, there was never one person who came and said, this is a good idea. 10 years later, we now have the interstate to Evansville. Everybody loves it. The economic development. Economic development all along the federal interstate has been a huge boon to that part of the state where I grew up. So this is the same thing. In 10 years, people will appreciate the anhydrous ammonia plant. They'll have an anhydrous ammonia fertilizer plant for the corn farmers in the eastern corn belt. They'll all ask, whatever happened to that carbon dioxide company? Because you'll never hear about it again.
To add to that, I think that to compare a highway project to an injection well, I think it's not the same. I mean, when you build a road, you know what your risks are. You know everything there. It's very obvious that the risk is, that. But this situation, you can say what you want, but there's always going to say what if. And that what if is what troubles me. And that's what troubles these people.
One thing that you mentioned was that you had talked with a number of commissioners during the I-69 process, in public, whatever. This bill was passed, I believe, originally in 2019. It finally came before the legislature at that point. Passed it.
Are you talking about 451 that we passed for this project?
The number of it. The original carbon dioxide legislation.
Well, I testified, so I can speak. What we asked the state to do is to have a clear path, a legal path, because we didn't know who owned the pore space. In a lot of states, it's a public right-of-way, and no one gets paid. All of the other injection wells, including the ones that you oversaw, who got paid for the injection well? Nobody. So we had to make sure we knew who would be the owner, under state law, and who and how much would they get paid. The State Farm Bureau negotiated the 40% of cash rent rates. That wasn't something that we came up with. But it's across the board. For our work, we have to pay under the statute.
Please respect the speaker.
So these things were all laid out, and the state decided to have a pilot so that they could see this in action and to know whether they needed to change the statute. If they come back later and say, statewide, you're going to have to pay more, we're happy to provide whatever the state requires, because it's a state authority. And I know it sounds like we're trampling over local zoning, but you don't have zoning authority over pipelines, or we wouldn't have any,
That's my question.
or roads.
My question actually is that in 2019 was the original legislation, correct, Louis?
There were two of them that didn't get passed. So it wasn't until '22 that we actually passed State Bill 451.
I believe that the first legislation was passed in 19, though.
Yeah.
And when did you actually come to the county commissioners here in Vermillion and Vigo County and talk to the commissioners about, before it got into 2019, did you do the groundwork there like you did with I-69? Where you talked to the commissioners in those counties that were going to be affected by I-69? Did you talk to the Vigo County and I wasn't here, so maybe you did, I don't know. Did you talk to Vermillion County commissioners about this?
Well, I wasn't around in 2019 either for this project, but the people at the site would be able to say whether I think they did reach out to everyone and explain what the process was. So, I mean, in all the years I've been in government, both state and federal, we've tried 2 other times significant efforts to have a fertilizer plant in Indiana, and both times they failed. So this is the third, and the state is very interested in having a local operation that manufactures anhydrous ammonia for our farmers. So right now we have to import it, and we're at the risk of you ask any farmer what the price point is on anhydrous ammonia, they're looking forward to the day when we have a local supplier.
I understand.
I'm a farmer.
Order.
No.
Go ahead.
But back to the question is did anybody from Wabash Valley Resources, or the state for that matter, approach the county commissioners in Vermillion County and discuss this with those commissioners?
I'll have to leave that to the people who were around in 2019. I know both of the state legislators who authored the bill were around.
Speak up.
So in terms of representatives who are overseeing the state authority, I know they were the authors of the bill, so I'm pretty certain they were fully informed. Whether there was actions at the local level, I'd have to ask the people at the plant.
Sure, thank you.
Is it also true in if we bring any type of suit, say in the future we have a problem with the county, is it true that we cannot even represent ourselves in our local courts if anything comes up and we have to go to a different court, Vigo County Court, to remedy any issues we have locally? Is that true?
That's a good question.
I don't want to challenge your own lawyers.
Yeah, the Vigo County jurisdiction is for very limited subset of claims. That would be if there are negotiations over pore space rights between the pilot project operator and the landowner. That if the parties can't reach an agreement, that gets resolved in Vigo County. But any other thing, I mean, any other lawsuit that the commissioners or any other interested citizen would want to bring, over any other issues, that venue provision doesn't apply.
So it says that we as a county can't regulate or make decisions on our own property within a confined footprint.
County-owned property, I mean, that's not an issue that I've considered.
I'm saying county property as far as within the jurisdiction of our county. personal or public?
Yeah, the goal of the statute was to funnel all of that litigation into one court so that the court could get expertise on it and handle the cases expeditiously and fairly.
So another court can make decisions that said the jurisdiction is from Vigo County, so you have Vigo County making decisions that affect Ramon County, right? We have been taking away our right to regulate.
Only in that one very narrow thing, and it doesn't affect the county's ability to regulate is defined, elsewhere in the Indiana code. I mean, the county's regulation is not affected by that venue provision.
But again, like I said, it takes our control out and puts it in Vigo.
Well, the control over the resolution of those disputes was not something within the jurisdiction of the county commission anyway. I mean, all it did was take it out.
In the court of law.
Yeah.
Nothing will be heard that is in reference to our county boundaries will be heard in our local courts. It takes away our right to do anything.
Only if there's a dispute about how much money should be paid for forest space. That's the only situation in which that would happen.
So again, it's taking away our rights.
No, it's just moving them to Terre Haute.
It sounds like you guys come here from out of county doing the same thing.
Well, and I mean, obviously, if the UDO is passed in its current form, we'd be in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Indiana. So we'd be in federal court.
Again, I know in the past of what was going on years ago down there, they was talking about, I worked down there at the plant, and when they closed it down, one of the big things was going to make it anhydrous ammonia, and that, to me, fine, nice thing to produce, it's also plastics or in the carbon sequester. So I think, and then I asked my question is, I mean, are you creating a byproduct and getting paid by the byproduct, and is it profitable without the federal government funding you for making a waste product that you have to do something with? If you take the carbon sequestration out of this by the federal government, would you exist? Would this project go? I think the answer is very obvious no.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to make one thing clear, that every anhydrous ammonia plant in the world generates carbon dioxide. The only difference between every other plant in Wabash Valley Resources is that everybody else just sends it up into the air, and our plan is to collect it and safely sequester it. Because, I mean, right now, ammonia production is the most carbon-intensive industrial production in terms of the number of tons of carbon dioxide that are emitted into the atmosphere per ton of ammonia that's produced. Ammonia manufacture by itself is about 2% of global carbon emissions. That's including cars, that's including, agriculture, that's including steel making, cement, that's including power plants. That just ammonia manufacturing is 2%. So decarbonizing the ammonia sector is pretty important in terms of trying to address climate change.
But the question is,
let's be a little careful, because not all this we need at the science areas. So say that it is climate change, it's not. So let's be a little careful on terminology, if you would.
But back to the original question, if it wasn't federal subsidy, it wouldn't happen. Right.
I'm not. I mean, we're not here to talk about the economics of.
Well, it's important,
but manufacturing ammonia is not a lose money proposition.
Let me answer it this way. The benefits we get from storing the carbon dioxide is set by federal statute, and that amount that we receive to sequester is meant to pay off the loan that the federal government. So if we would have just had a smokestack, we wouldn't have needed any of this. But to your point, we don't make money off of sequestering. We make money off of selling anhydrous ammonia. what the loan is going to do is get paid off over 12 years by the sequester of carbon dioxide. So it's a zero-sum game for us, but we wouldn't have been given an air permit to exhaust carbon dioxide. So you don't have to believe the science, but the federal government will not allow you to have a new plant that emits this amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So those arguments were all done in Washington, and they decided they wanted carbon sequestration. The federal government is pushing this to the tune of $1.559 billion. But that's going to be paid off when we start sequestering carbon dioxide. We have to do it.
And further to Greg's point, actually carbon capture and sequestration is now going to be required for all new coal and gas-fired power plants.
So, okay. RJ, you got anything to say?
No, I mean, like I said, I've read your emails, I've listened to everybody's concerns. I think this UDO has a lot of things to digest, and like I told a lot of people, I don't anticipate myself voting in favor or against anything 2 days, 280 pages. There's a lot of things to review as a commissioner, and I think it would be a disjustice to the citizens to approve or disapprove anything without really diving into a lot of these sections and arguments. I mean, I know there's other things in here that are not even close to carbon sequestration, like fence height, just little things in here that, I think need to address as well, so that's all I have.
Okay, I appreciate you all coming. Like I said, when you come, I know that many times we don't want to hear to the other side. I mean, they have a right to be here, and I think it's just very good government. When you're taking the responsibility that you two have, and to come and let the people know you're here, and it's good government. And I appreciate you coming. If you come, again, make sure you get on the agenda early so people can see the agenda and stuff like that. But I appreciate you coming.
Well, we are sincere about doing right with Vermilion County.
So let me just ask you, if you're talking about going right with Vermilion County, why is there some type of compensation? If you're going to jam it down our throat, which you are, where is the compensation for we as a county? I mean, shouldn't there be some royalty? There's so much cubic feet, but we get X royalty or something, because eventually, where's our benefit?
Well,
where's our benefit?
let's sit down and talk about that.
It's a little late.
I mean, as you know, we had proposed a community benefits arrangement, and it ended up being kind of more controversial than we'd intended. But I mean, we are open to conversation.
Anybody else have any questions for you?
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate the chance to chat with you.
Since we're on this, Penny, you want to say something? I'm not going to take it.
Penny Carpenter, Vermilion County citizen, taxpayer. I'm not area plan today.
No, I don't want to open, you make a statement, and that's what it's going to go. We're not going to have an open, going back and forth discussion.
Okay, the open statement, my statement is, Gupta at the Union Hall said, if you don't want it, we won't come. I have a recorded conversation with Gupta saying, I will not come to Vermilion County if the citizens don't want it. And I think the citizens have spoken. And Gupta, he's on record saying he wouldn't come.
I know, I've seen that. I agree with you 100%. Next, we're going to move on, if that's okay with you all.
That's fine.
Next is the 2024-10 ordinance, Unified Development Ordinance and Zoning Map. Penny, and Brad Johnson. No, not to the end.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So you have before you the Unified Development Ordinance. I know RJ has questions, concerns that he wanted to bring up at today's meeting. I'm here to answer and just try to have dialogue about that. Ultimately, my job is to serve the county and to put into the ordinance what you want to have in the ordinance. If fences, as just was mentioned, is not something you want to have in there, we can easily take that stuff out, we can change it, modify it. I'm not here to stand up and say, this is exactly how you have to adopt it. I always try to keep telling people that zoning should not be something you lock in. It should be something that adapts to the circumstances, whatever they may be. I hope that even if you adopt this in the upcoming weeks, is that you are always keeping an eye out for where it's serving you right and where it's not serving you right, and that you're going to make amendments to it, because that's how you serve the public. That's how we progress. Waiting 20 years to revisit it's just really the wrong thing. So what I want to say is that I'm here to hear the concerns, but do know that everything that went into this document up to this point has been based on best practices that I've observed. But what trumps that even is what we heard in committees, in the surveys that we started off with, and with the APC's input to the document. I can say all day long that a certain way of writing an ordinance is the absolute best way, but if people don't like it, that's your local choice. And I 100% support that, and I will always let you make your choices. So I know that one of the issues that has been raised is, should the minimum lot size for agriculture be 2 acres or 1 acre or something else? I don't have the right or wrong answer for that. Like Purdue Extension Services, they publish papers about on-site, we call them septic systems, but the reality is they're finger systems. But the jargon that's used is on-site septic management or sewage management. The EPA, the State Board of Health, and other agencies have all commented on on-site septic systems. And it's estimated today that 1 out of 5, as a bare minimum, of septic systems in the state of Indiana are failing, or have failed. We don't know if they've failed until you do some pretty extensive testing of soils and water, which no one has the budget to really afford, but that's the bare minimum, is 1 out of 5 have failed.
I think
so. The reason why we had 2 acres is to try to create that redundancy. It's not a law that requires you to have a 2 acre minimum, because you can't have redundancy systems.
that's where there's no public water or public sewer.
Right. Yes, exactly. So, but that is one of those best practices things. But again, I can tell you that, and that's fine, but the reality is you got to make your own local choices on that. And if you want to go a different direction, that's what you can do.
One of the answers to that problem, I put in septic systems, and I build houses and stuff, but the thing about any time we have a building permit application done in, it has to go to the health department for approval of the septic system. So if you really want to look at it, you kind of got to, and Penny can verify this, that unless you got a septic permit, you're not going to get a building permit. So we do have some type of fail-safe in there. But the problem we have is the problem with septic systems is sometimes you have a failure and you don't have enough room to have an alternate site on that. And that's something I would suggest, that any lot should be big enough, at least 2 fields put in there. If one fails, and you have an alternate to it. But again, you get city sewer and city water available, none of that applies.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to accommodate. Now, some counties, they actually have a permitting process where you actually have to show on your site plan where you're going to have that secondary site, and it becomes a no disturb area. You can't build a building on it, you can't plant your garden on it, you can't do this. I mean, it's meant to be a set aside. We're not going that far here. The only idea is that with 2 acres, we're pretty confident that you always have at least some place you could put an additional finger system. So, again, right or wrong, that's the logic that we were using when we drafted that. I'm here to tell you that we're fine with, modifying it if that's what's necessary.
As a point of order, I have a lot of questions, but I don't think there's questions. Doesn't mean that there's an answer, or there could be multiple answers. But I would prefer to take my time and get through the rest of the document and then discuss this with you, because I think probably 95% of them can be answered without having to go through a oration here and be here until how late, and tie up everybody's time. So I would prefer to continue through this, get my questions to you, and then the ones that are still an issue, I guess, whatever those are, then discuss that in our meeting here. Because I think the way the document's written, it's just questions, it's not necessarily a change, and I don't think that's instrumental for everybody just to listen to my questions. So I would prefer to continue this to a later time, either next meeting, so that I get through this. I think you guys have questions as well, but I can see we took 5 minutes just to do that. And if we do that for every question that comes up here, I think we're going to run into, people aren't going to pay attention. We're not going to pay attention.
And I would prefer, Brad, with the questions, if you could just email me back the answers if I got them, or if all of us commissioners on an email, that's going to work a lot better for me than like Britton said in here, going one by one in there, because like we talked about earlier today, I think, at heart, we're all kind of smaller government mind, and that's where I'm at with requiring all these extra little things, and I don't need to get into that out here. I think we can discuss that in an email, and then us commissioners can decide what needs to stay in the UDO or whether it needs sent back. And to that point, it's 90 days, is that right?
I meant to look that up, and I do not have that.
Okay.
So we can work.
I have is to actually have the dates.
The timeline, so we.
Come into play. I know it resets once certain milestones are met.
I think with open door laws, I can have dialogue back and forth with each individual.
That's
commissioner.
fine.
But if we're all four of us talking, I don't think that's legal to have that dialogue without having an open door policy.
That's fine.
So answering questions, certainly.
That's fine.
I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that we need to be above board and just make sure we're having.
I want to say, first and foremost, that we've had an excellent group of people that's put a lot of time in to produce this.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a great document. I've been reading through it, and I've got probably 10 or 12 questions that I've outlined. But today's not the day to go through that. I think it's a time we just need to get together and discuss these things and bring them back up, maybe in, I don't know what type of session it would be, whatever you guys would prefer to.
Well, mine is just for Brad. Once he answers them, like I said, probably most of them are going to be answered. It's just a question I have, or clarification I have as to what the intent was.
But on the other hand, if there's something that we want changed,
Well, that would be, then it would come back.
Yeah, then we come back as a work session or even a regular meeting. Yeah, either one.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say thanks to the entire committee and everything, because I gotta say, it's much easier to nitpick through this document after you guys just spent a year working on it. It's much easier being on the other side and just looking at it and looking through that. So thank you for all your time and effort.
but this is the document they did. It's very, very thorough. I'm thinking, if I was going to be the building inspector or somebody like that, there's a lot of boxes to check. A lot of it's legitimate, and it's very thorough, and it's very complete. And I'm just thinking,
Yeah, just to reiterate, there's a lot of pages there. I get that it can be shocking to take a look at that, but for any individual property, there's no more than 20 pages that apply to that individual property, because we have 18 districts, and a lot of those are for the city of Clinton. If you look at just your district, the absolute worst case scenario is those 20 pages. So if an inspector, for instance, or a zoning administrator in the future, they're going to get to those 20 pages. And some of those 20 pages are like the wind farm regulations. Well, if they're not applying for a wind farm, then there goes another 5 pages that you don't have to read. So when you really look at just the stuff that's likely going to be reviewed for a zoning administrator, it's actually fairly small.
One of the issues we've had over the years is outside investors coming into our county.
Yeah.
There's always been this question, what can I do and where can I do it? And I think this is a very, very important document that when investors look into our county, they can say we can build X within the confines of the zoning instead of having to go to the zoning people. All the other things are there. They already know what's available.
That's correct.
And I think it's a very big asset to our county, and it really will help.
I've had the privilege of helping a couple of communities that have never had zoning. And the number one person pushing the mission to have a zoning ordinance in those counties was their economic development officials. And that's because they regularly, as soon as an investor found out that they don't have a zoning ordinance, they left. They see zoning as a protection of their investment. They don't see it as an obstacle, which is just, it kind of, it's hard to believe that, but the reality is the banks want you to have a zoning ordinance that protects that investment, that's a straightforward, these are the things we have to do. And we know next year that something awful doesn't happen right next to me that impacts my investment. So the counties in the state of Indiana that do not have zoning have a very difficult time doing economic development. You would think no rules would mean everybody wants to be there, right? But it's just not. It almost defies logic, but that is what the reality is in those counties. So, and we are just really in this ordinance focusing on the basic stuff that is regulated by, the vast majority of counties. We're not inventing new stuff that has never been regulated. So the idea is to just create you a good foundation for economic development.
Through this document, as the director or administrator for APC, is this something, as it's written now, you believe that you have no staff when it comes to it?
Correct.
Is this something that you believe that you can administer, at least for the foreseeable future?
Yes.
I know some might be good and might cause other issues. But
Sure.
as we currently have been practicing or increasing population or building permits, et cetera, this is something that you believe that within the hours that you have will be able to administer still?
Yes.
Will it decrease your time?
No.
Well, Brad, would you be able to send us a timeline then of
Yes,
all this?
I will get back to you on the kind of the deadline that we spoke about, where the state statutes kick in.
Yeah.
Again, I said that at the last meeting, I do not want that to get.
No, just for our reference, so we
get to
can,
that point.
yeah, just so we have a
Surprises,
reference of it.
Yeah.
It's good for us to have a timeline.
Yes.
John, our process here, one of the 1A, B, or C, and we'll all have a comment on that. If we have differences, if there is a change in this, how does that come about?
So you can accept it, reject it, or send it back with amendments. If you cannot all three agree on what you want to do, I would suggest take each individual idea and put it to a vote. So if you want to change this sentence, you say, I want to change this sentence, and you, Tim, and RJ vote on that, and maybe you send them back a list of requested changes.
And when we request those changes, do we actually need to write that section, or do we highlight, or do we?
I would suggest putting in writing what you want changed.
I completely agree, and it can be just a specific request, like we want to accomplish this very clearly, and how it exactly gets worded, or where it gets inserted in the ordinance, this is, we can.
Well, that's
and
why
then
I can see that.
if you want to wordsmith it, that's fine, but you can also just say, we don't like this number, we think it needs to be closer to 1, or closer to 5, or whatever the number is.
Section A may affect section C, D, and T, and whatever.
Yes, one request could have a ripple effect through.
And if we have to do that, I can see that being a very long process, just even one little request to have to go and say we caught it in all these other sections, so.
Right, and that would be my job to come back with a red pen version that shows that.
Well, what if we just have a meeting in the commissioners meeting and we bring all our differences together and vote for which ones we want to do it that way, and then instead of everyone's sticking something in, why don't we come up with all of them come together and bring them up for a vote?
I think that's where we're going, once we all review the
But
document.
just, a lot of my questions are probably not issues. You have to answer them, and okay, what's the clarification, what does this mean even? It's not like I understand every word that's in there either, so. And I agree, after I get done, and I think we can set a special meeting, and we can hammer out whatever's left, I think those have a problem. If any.
And I would like for us, when we do that, to send what we're recommending, what we're gonna vote for, back to the, APC or whatever is doing that, to let them give feedback to us, because there might be something there they know we don't know either, you know, respect their input regardless of the decision.
Any of these, none of the board members would be present whenever we're down to that final number. If it, like I said, if it's in.
But overall, this is superior work. I mean, it's done well.
Thank you.
Very, very happy with it.
Have you done any changes this already, or this is still
No,
the?
yeah, it's untouched from the
Because I
time.
notice when I click on things, it doesn't come to the right section. 3.4 is really 3.2 or whatever.
I want PDF.
Yeah.
Should not be, but I can look into that. Okay.
Consistently, it's all.
So the document that was made available on the county's website, I think it was about 15 days, 20 days before the Area Plan Commission meeting, the night that they held the public hearing. It has not changed from that date till today. And that's for legal reasons. We can't.
Yeah, I was just wanting to make sure we're still looking at the
Yeah.
same document.
And there is one caveat. The Plan Commission legally voted on a few changes. We did make that change, and that's what's in front of you with the ones that were made live in the meeting. But yes.
Again, it's just
Yeah.
a
I will-
in there.
Yeah, I'll look into that file to see. But your final document that you get will have correct hyperlinks that will go to the right sections. I can assure you that. I'll check
Just wanted to
those.
make sure I wasn't reading a different document.
Yeah, I'm surprised that doesn't happen very often, so we'll figure that out.
So what do you want to make a motion where we go from here?
I'm gonna,
Understanding.
yeah, I think we're just gonna review it and then,
When I get done, I'll let you guys know I've asked my questions to Brad, and I'm ready to go, so.
What we set a date so far out that we all need to have our stuff done to come back together to bring our differences. or whatever.
Okay, if you want, what date do you want?
So I would rather have it done, it has to be done for the next meeting. Would you all agree with that?
I expect I will be 2 weeks by the time I get my answers back,
yeah.
but I don't know that that means anything. However, we can discuss that at a regular meeting if you want to do that. We'll just,
So what-
set a special meeting, we'll just plan on trying to have a different, or anything that we want changed, if anything, ready for the next meeting. If we don't, then extend it. So.
Okay, we need to set a date before we leave today.
Regular meeting.
Huh?
The regular meeting.
Next regular meeting.
Okay.
Is that a union meeting? No.
We've had a change of dates and time at meeting today because election's tomorrow and have our meetings this morning.
See meeting conflict. if one-
Conference.
And also tonight, council has our meeting tonight, right? They don't? Okay. Next Tuesday. Okay. Anyway, our meeting was this morning because it was changing because of election day. So that's where we're going with everything. We will get together, we will and if anyone has any comment and any public knowledge, have looked through these things and have questions and concerns, please let us know and we'll address them.
Please do send an email. It's better if you have language. I prefer in writing, if you will, if you have comments to anything in the document here.
You had a concern today, right, with the wind and solar, with the solar? Yeah, can you send that to the auditor and then auditor?
She should send it to the APC.
Right, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out where it goes, send it to them also, so it gets to us. you know. Okay, so Penny, your responsibility to get us, right? Okay, very good. Very good. Okay. Again, I think we as commissioners are very happy with what was done by y'all. It was a very, very, very nice, well-developed, well-thought-through, very, very good project.
Thank you. We'll see you again soon.
Yep. Tattoo ordinance. Anybody want to make an up and down vote on that?
Tattoo ordinance. She brought that in the last meeting and the meeting before, I believe. Yeah. I've read through it. I don't have any recommended changes unless you guys do.
Make a recommendation, let's move on.
If you don't, I'll make a motion to approve tattoo ordinance 2022-15 with the amendment for eyelash extensions. What's this 2022 on here? Is that, no, that's the original ordinance was 2022 with an amendment. I think they're just amending it. I don't think it's an amendment.
And second? I think the health department's doing a good job on administrating all these things going on, the changes in our county. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. Policy needed for a small SBOA. Some of the stuff, if we don't have to mess with today, would make a move on.
Yep.
So is that a carryover?
Yep.
Weight limits on roads. We are addressing a few things on weight limits. Our county has taken a more proactive move for preservation of historical things in our county. One is the old red brick road northwest of Universal. Been there for years, and it's kind of a part of the, not the yellow brick road, it's the red brick road. That's there, it's a historical part of our community, a historical piece, and we've changed the load number right on that road. And it's not restricting agricultural, we can't do that, but if we can, in type of any development where major construction's going on over there, then it kind of, they can go around it or something. Trying to preserve local piece of history. Britain's been working on that. They've done some more ditching, I think, out there along the edges of it to get better drainage, and we will eventually, to the, our historian will be putting a sign up out there talking about the red brick road. There's a good story behind it. I don't want to into it today, but folklore mainly what it is. But it's an interesting piece of history that we're trying to preserve. And anytime, every day, history disappears more. And if you can preserve it, protect it, I think that's something that we as a county are going to be more proactive in doing. Secondly, on the weight limits, do you have anything to say about that, Brittany?
John, did you find the ordinances that, any ordinances?
I know we've done them in the past, but I have signed copies.
Maybe we can find
You
that.
have non-unsigned copies.
I could probably find you some unsigned copies if you want those, but I can guarantee that's what was finally enacted, so.
But our weight limits are customary in effect during the wintertime.
I've seen them for our county, or during certain months out of the year that there's a restriction on certain roads.
And we always reserve that right to change things. A lot of times in the spring, we have a sudden thaw or freeze, and then we just can't, some of these roads can't go down if they get the freeze and thaw going on them. But anyway, so that's been carried over. Appointing a RISE member, I make a recommendation to J.P. Green be appointed to the RISE board. I'm going to bring it up today for a vote for approval.
Yeah, I would just like to say, before we appoint any new member out there, a board member had sent us an email with concerns about how the RISE is being operated by the current board, and I share those concerns with that board member. I've shared them with my fellow commissioners. I've reached out to the attorney and the board president. I have had no response back, and I would ask the commissioners waylay any appointments unless you guys have found differently that what this concern from this board member is not accurate.
Have you personally talked and addressed this issue with each board member?
I've reached out to board members, the president.
Have you talked to them?
Tim, I cannot force them to return my phone calls or return my emails. Okay? I can't help it that I'm on an island and they are not talking to me. And that's what it is. I'm in the minority, which is fine, but I still think they need to answer for these concerns that Mr. Ellis has brought forth to us.
Okay.
And you guys have that same email, and these are, I mean, I can read the email out loud today if you.
Well, these are internal issues. Number one should be an executive meeting, number one. I don't think it's appropriate to do that today.
Well, then I think the appointment should be waylaid today. If not, then I can read this email so the public understands the concerns that Mr. Ellis has with how the board is being operated.
Okay.
So I'll leave that to you guys.
So you gotta call each board member?
I have called multiple board members. I've not called them all because I don't have contact with one of them, but I've emailed the president. I've called the president. I've texted the president. I have attempted to call JP since he was recommended, and JP has not returned my calls either. But again, when you're the minority, I guess, I mean, that's the prerogative of some people, but I would say the minority of the commissioners is what I would say. But again, Joe's concerns are very valid. Lacey Romig resigned from the board due to more or less the same issues. Tim, you can say be careful, but we can.
Well, I mean, you're speaking for someone else.
I'm not speaking for somebody else. I've talked to people.
What people?
Former members.
We have a simple question today, and it's very simple. JP Ring, I've been trying to get him to be part of our local community. He's one of the brightest people you've ever met. He's been in upper management. I think it's very important that when you're trying to find somebody, you try to find the very best, and that's always been my goal. JP Ring has got international contacts. He's all over the United States. He's very global. He's a graduate of Rose-Hulman, and he's top of the line. And to me, it was no brainer anyway, because regardless of the issues, which are side things in my opinion, but JP Ring is very brilliant, very intelligent, very smart, very much involved in the community, and that's what I'm looking for. So if you all want to be involved in the community and you have aspirations, please let me know, because we're looking for the very best. And I think JP Ring, and even the board members are talking to them, they're very excited to have him to be involved of his caliber and his connections. So,
well, Tim, I don't think anybody.
That's the vote today.
I don't think anybody would dispute JP's qualifications or that he's a great person for the board. I think the question at hand is, as Joe said in his email, they had showed up to meetings. Board members like himself and Lacey Romig was left out of emails. They were not handed contracts. They were not handed documents.
These are really internal issues that we should.
Okay, internal issues that the board will not answer for, that I've asked. I've put an email, I've called the attorney, I've called the board president, and I've brought them to the commissioners, and in an email, neither one of you seem to share these concerns.
Well,
We're ready to appoint a new
member.
member.
I'll talk about it. When you send a letter to the board and threaten to fire all of them, I have an issue with that. So this is in the conversation.
No, this isn't in the conversation. No. I told the board if they're going to continue to operate the RISE the way they are, and if I'm here in January and they don't want to open it up to the public like it should be, then yeah, I would take a personal point to replace each and every single board member at the RISE. You're absolutely right, Tim.
And you do have authority to do it unless
Well, you're right, I don't, but the majority does. And I've sat here for 4 years being the minority, so if there's a new majority here in January, by God, they will be replaced. They can watch that and hear that today.
Regarding the discussion, the issue is, so we're going to support JP Ring to be the next board member.
Do you have any issues with what Mr. Ellis had emailed you? That's my question.
I have issues, but also there's personal conflicts there too. And if I deal with this, I'm dealing with them, with the board, which it should be. Bring it to public.
The difference is the board is not responding to me because
you need to go to a meeting. Why don't you go to one of the meetings?
Tim, a phone call and an email works just as well. You know what I think the problem is? I think you and the board president and the board members out there are fine with withholding documents to certain board members. Because I've sat here and I've witnessed that in the last 4 years.
I have a question that's relevant to this. I think you stepped way over bounds.
No, there's no way bounds. It's the truth.
Well, if we want to go through that, then I have a whole 3 pages of things that we can discuss about.
Hey, let's do it. It's a public meeting. Let's go.
This needs to be put back into perspective. We're here to make, I made a recommendation.
Do we not have no concerns with what Mr. Ellis put forth?
That is not the issue we're discussing. The issue is, you gotta stay on track. The issue is, I made a recommendation to appoint JP Ring. The things you bring up are side issues and not the question. If you want to address that in a separate question, it can be addressed later.
Tim, I emailed you about that and you've not responded yet to those issues. Have you? I've emailed you.
I'm saying, there's a lot of things I know, and I'm not going to discuss it publicly here.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe in an email to your fellow commissioners would work as well, too.
We can all go to a meeting and discuss it. Do you agree? Or show up the next meeting at the RISE, I'll show up, Britt will show up, we'll discuss it.
Or maybe the commissioners could actually work together and respond in an email like it should be. But
anyway, we're moving on. The question, right, John, is I have a question on the floor, and we need to address it. Correct? Okay. The very question is, I'm recommending JP Ring for the RISE board, and I'm bringing it for a vote. Got a second on it?
Is that your motion, Tim?
Yes, to appoint JP Ring as the replacement on the RISE board.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Discussion?
Yes. Why does this appointment teeter on whether JP's not going to have part of this board today? Why does the decision of an appointment to this board teeter on whether whether the board is active in any manner, for that matter, or whatever they've done? There's 5 appointments to this board. So how does this affect that appointment?
Well, I think it just coincides at the same time that Joe had brought this concern to us at the time appointments being made. And I think we should address how the board's being in operation, because we appoint all those board members, they answer to the Board of Commissioners, and if we tell them, well, I guess if the majority has no issues with how they're operating, I think that's a problem. So I think before we make any appointments, we should correct if there's any issues out there of not having documents for a full board, or not sharing quotes, or not sharing things with board members. That's wrong, whether it's a board of 3, board of 7, board of 5. If you're on the minority, you are still to be included in those discussions. And Mr. Ellis and Ms. Romig, and even Eddie Thompson, who was there, were not a part of this. They will tell you that. You can talk to them. But instead, we are saying, we don't care, we're appointing JP, he's a great candidate. I agree, JP has great connections, great candidate. But that doesn't fix the issue of how the board is currently operating.
How does this fix the issue if JP is or isn't?
You're right. We could just weigh that entirely. You're right. I don't think this board and the majority right now has an issue with the way the Rise Board is operating.
Well, we don't necessarily know. You say people. What people?
Former board members,
We need to move
I
on.
have said this in an email. Lacey Romig, call her, talk to her. Joe Ellis wrote a 6-paragraph email. Did you guys read it?
Yes.
You read it, okay.
I'm very familiar with Joe Ellis.
Okay. Okay, so if you read it, there was a lot of concerns in there.
How does it, again, how does that affect?
The question is,
I think the commissioner should address that before appointing any board member, regardless.
Why?
You're right, Brittany, it doesn't matter, I'm in the minority right now, so I would say just move on with your vote, and come tomorrow, we'll see if there's any, well, you won't be here come tomorrow.
we had discussion, the call for a vote. The vote is to appoint J.P. Green on the Rise Board, replacing Lacey Romig. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain, for reasons stated.
What I'm saying is best if we have an issue to go to their meetings and attend it and voice your concerns. And if you want to go, I'll go with you.
Tim, I'm not going to a public meeting when this can be discussed in an email with a board president or a phone call. I try to do things the right way, I try to do things the correct way, and when these board members refuse to talk to me, that's fine. I'm in the minority, and that's fine, but like you said, threaten to replace them come January, you're absolutely right. A new majority can replace appointments at any given time. You're absolutely right.
Which just calls it should be. Moving on. County home lease, we're just going to let that go today. I've seen some documentation on that, but we're on cell phone. I don't, anything to do with that? Move it on. Still working on it. Union Hospital agreement? Rick?
We haven't agreed, this is a security agreement with the sheriff. There is a couple of issues with that agreement that we probably need to give notice to Union Hospital, not terminate necessarily, but that we need to address those issues. One is the cost of the employee. I don't have to pull it up right now, but the two major issues. One is the cost that is paid doesn't appear to be meeting the cost of the county. And this is a private entity, and because of that, right now they're asking for, it retains $38. It's been that way for I don't know how long, but it's still $38 in that agreement. If we continue that on until January of 2025, our cost apparently is closer to $59 plus or minus. That's just our cost to break even. It's not that we're making money on it, but we're actually losing money. And since this is a private concern, we should be at least recovering the costs here. I agree. We need to make sure we verify, and I think we've got verification back. I would like to see it enumerated as opposed in a paragraph form. But anyway, if this is acceptable, we need to give notice to the city, or not the city, but the hospital, let them know that we want to discuss anyway the agreement.
Well, it's a very important thing. I think that all of us is very happy with our sheriff's department and the deputies and all they do, and the volunteers, and John's got a lot to do with that, but on the other hand, what they're doing and want them to make money, but on the other hand, we think that the county shouldn't be liable for the cost. Is that what we're saying? We just want equal compensation for the costs that we're being reimbursed for.
Yes. The second part of that is that it asks for that contract is not, can't be disclosed to other parties. Well, we can't do that. This is a contract, it's a public contract, and that part needs to be struck from the document. Unless John knows of some other reason that we can't hold it confidential, but that part there is not an appropriate section. But anyway, I would get with the city or with the hospital, see if we can't come to some agreement, and I'll present that agreement to commissioners, hopefully the next meeting, not necessarily, whenever can meet with them as well, so maybe 2 meetings out.
Do you want that specific? You want to get to me, get me email?
I'll get back. Yeah, I need to discuss it with them and see where they stand, because there may not be an agreement.
County parks, can we push that to the next time? We agree, moving on some of this stuff. The county handbook, you're still working on it, right? Okay, we got public defender cost recovery, RJ, you got.
Working on that still?
You need any other information that we can help you with?
No, John's got me that stuff, and a lady over in Indianapolis has been pretty helpful with that, so still work in progress.
Okay, is there any date we need to have that done by to do something on cost recovery?
The person I spoke to said it was pretty much retroactive, so whenever you get it done.
Date for that, when they occupied it, so we should.
Well, yeah, from us, yeah.
Okay, but is there something that could go back over a year or so, you
No, yeah, my understanding of the conversation I had was even if you waited 4 years and went back, they would still recover it then, so.
It'd be easier to make sure we have it
Yeah.
sooner than later.
Understand.
The cost may get to be, it's not that big a cost.
Yeah.
If we wait 10 years to do it.
Yeah, she said the sooner the better, but there was no deadline that you wouldn't be reimbursed.
Okay, ambulance facility, I think, can we discuss Clinton City and get that over with? I would like to bring that, because it brings closure to one part of the question we have.
Well, Clinton City is amenable to extending the contract beyond 3 years. One of my concerns with this ambulance and picking the north first was that it takes time to get these things in place and actually to get it constructed. And in 3 years' time, I believe that we would be pushed to be able to have a separate facility down south. Not that City of Clinton wouldn't extend it for 3 years, but that's not a given either. So they're willing to extend that out to a 10-year period. Doesn't mean that we can't do it in 2 years and send it notice, but it gives us, I think, the leeway at that point to make sure that there would be new commissioners here, at least one anyway. And so when the decision making comes down as to where this facility, this allows us time to be able to do that, especially if we're going to build one up north first, which is the majority. Not my opinion that we should do that, but that is the one that we're doing. So we're going to acquire property, we're going to build that. It also gives us time to change our funding up north also if we want to. Right now, we're talking about that all to be self-funded. Again, the council bids will come in, council will still have to agree to certain plans of that. The property will be acquired here before the end, should be before the end of the year once we have the real estate, legal restrictions in and so forth. North Vermillion School Corporation is still in agreement to do that. So if we do build the one up north, and if we can extend our contract down south to up to 10 years as opposed, and then if you renegotiate at 7 years, or if we're still, and maybe it'll become a permanent solution for that matter. They're amenable to that 10 years, but they're also amenable to, in their longer range plans as far as use of that facility and occupation of that, those rooms there, minus some substantial changes. There are plans right now that we would be able to continue even that beyond 10 years. So if you're agreeable to that, we can redraft, or not redraft, but amend that agreement to change it from a 3-year to a 2-year period. That gives us the leeway for this ambulance facility without having to go back and push the 3-year mark. And again, I don't think we'll make 3 years on the facility anymore, regardless.
To let everyone know what's going on, we currently have our new ambulance facility. It was across from the ambulance, across from the hospital, and we moved it up to Clinton City Fire Department. The Clinton City has been very reasonable. The value of $1,500 a month of rent to have our ambulance facility there, and that includes utilities. And so as far as us trying to venture out and build a new facility there versus that $1,500 a month that set cost, I think it's a given as far as from a financial thing. And if we do it a 10-year, I think it's a very good thing with those costs. You can't build a building and probably finance it for that $1,500 a month. It also has the ambulance there by the fire department, which is another thing. And some of you might know, we've been working on new ambulance facilities. We have a site right now that has been agreed with North Vermillion High School. They agreed to the property to us to put an ambulance facility right there in the north end. I think it's a home run for everybody. It's close to the highway. It's close to our most cherished possession as our kids. And then in the south, we also have a site there at across the road from South Vermillion. But since this other one here has come up, I think it's probably where we're leaning at. But it's very good thinking. I think that people on the ambulance committee, the commissioners, and the council has been very favorable for this positive move. So I would like to move on that agreement.
One thing I failed to mention was that Julie Lazone, who is the director over the ambulance service, she doesn't particularly like being at the Clinton Fire Department, not because of facilities or anything, or because of any issues there. It has to do with them running, whenever they have a run in the Clinton area, or the Clinton response area anyway. The fire department is basically going out at the same time as the ambulance. I didn't particularly see that as an issue, but she did mention that. So I mean,
Of all issues, if that's one of them.
well, I
Want to bring it
don't
up?
have a problem with that either, because that's the way my experiences as firefighter and first
Work together.
responder. That's what we did. Also, we had an ambulance at our station, and we ran in. It was a benefit, even though we both got there at the same time. Sometimes they even get there and guide them to the place because you down hoops on the ambulance.
I'm in agreement with amending that to 10 years if they're amenable to that.
And we can back out at any time, right? I mean, if something comes along, we decide to change.
Yes, there's an out cost.
Okay.
But it would be good publicly, probably, well,
Yeah.
what else on that?
Give me comment on that, John.
Really, I mean, unless
The existing contract we have, would it be okay to change the dates and use the same contract we had?
if that's what you guys want to do, there'd be no big problem with it.
I'm not talking about changing any language, and I think that was already agreeable to John and the other attorneys, so.
So if you want to change it, there's nothing wrong with doing that. If you want to keep it the same, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Just have-
Okay, so what's the process he needs to go through with a piece of paper and go in and have it signed
If
or
he
what?
wants to change it, then we will put the changes in writing and send it back to them to review our proposed changes,
And they would sign it and we
or
would
send it back.
I think the big thing is, we're trying to make decisions here, and we've already got one part of it secured, then all our focus can go to the other one, and it makes more clarity. So,
And I'm hoping by the, this may still be 2 meetings before we actually have the agreement with, but we might have to watch our meeting dates because the school corporation has one that only meets once a month, so we watch our timing on that as well, so that we don't.
We're just gonna move on, if you don't mind, move on to the rest of it, is okay? County burn ban, Walter here, I know he was here, he wanted me to sign a paper, I didn't mean to be rude to him, but I was busy.
Had a conversation with the county fire chiefs and the sheriff. They're in agreement to extend the burn ban another 30 days. Last week, in one afternoon, we had fires in Vermillion County, Illinois, fires in Vermillion County, fires in Fountain County, fires in Park County, and multiple fires in Vigo County that our responders were responding to. And it was a nightmare. People are out just doing whatever the hell they feel like in weather like this. well, not rainy weather, but in windy weather and dry conditions, everybody's gonna sit back here and say, oh, we got rain. Let's get rid of the burn ban, but 3 days from the end of this rain, we're gonna be right back where we were. So, send it out to you guys, needs a signature.
Y'all in favor?
Absolutely. Mark, is there I don't know if it's in this burn ban, or do we have an ordinance where people can be fined an X amount of dollars for
Yes,
doing
you
it?
guys signed that last year.
That's what I thought. Now, are all the fire chiefs aware of that? 'Cause-
They all have a copy of it.
Okay, good. Because I had some fire members message me about that, and I told them to give it their fire chief, because I was certain there was some type of language in there that the fire chiefs had authority, or the sheriff, or somebody.
Fire chief has the authority, and the sheriff is the person who actually writes the
Okay.
fine.
Yep.
Do our, so,
It's signed in the wrong spot.
well, it's okay, I'll send it right spot.
That's why it's got the thing that says,
Give it here. Some people in this world are perfect, and I'm not one of them.
I will send another copy of that ordinance out too,
Okay.
with
Sure.
this.
If you could email me that as well, Mark, so I can have that. I was trying to search my email, and I'm like John, trying to search everywhere to find something that was.
Now, does the city, Clinton City, like that have jurisdiction within their own?
Well, they have their own, but they fall under the county if they cannot enforce that. And they can't be less than the county has, but they can be more.
Yeah.
So, same with state laws,
I
federal
think the
laws.
practical thing is that people need to take responsibility for their actions, and that's where it comes down to. It's
Yeah.
not really a matter of finding, it's a matter of being responsible.
Right. And there's, in this burn ban, it doesn't say that you can't burn. It just says if you do burn, you have to have it in containment. You have to have a cover over the top of it. You have to have water around. You don't leave a 3-year-old with matches to play outside the barn and then complain that somebody burned your barn down.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. So the burn ban is in effect, so,
Until December 2nd,
what?
till December 2nd.
Okay.
Don't
And
burn.
anytime you guys can rescind it too.
That's based on, commissioners, we don't make that decision, we rely on the fire chief's recommendations. Moving on to move time change for commissioner meeting, the meeting on December 3rd has been moved to December 2nd. Anybody wants to take a
I have
note?
another one with a typo there. You guys wanna think about December the 31st?
For
I mean,
Others
I mean,
We had 2 meetings in December.
Oh, I see
One
what
that
you're
we
saying.
did- Last
Just
meeting
cut it.
was December 31st at 6:30. Are we?
Do we need to meet, because we've only met, most meetings is just twice a month, right? Or most meetings.
Unless there's something,
Usually that would, in, you've seen what they did in the past, they had it first thing in the morning on the 31st and made their appointments, and then that was it.
Pretty much it.
It's up to you guys.
I'm okay scratching the meeting unless you guys have, I mean, is it's early enough planning that we can.
well, I think that if there's a major issue, it'd be different, but
I think we can probably address that in the last.
Next meeting?
before.
The meeting before, yeah.
Whatever date that is.
gives you plenty of time to get public notice anyway.
Well, if we still have information or things that we have to do, we can.
Yeah.
So we're down to the last public comment. Not the last one public comment, but last chance to speak. Again, you all been very, very cooperative today. Appreciate that. And respectful.
My name is Kurt Jackson. I want to thank the commissioners for taking a stand on the carbon sequestering and also the pipelines. Just a couple comments, and I will address you and not the 3 gentlemen in the back of the room. Find it kind of interesting that Mr. Zoller wants everybody to use FAQs, which prevents them from having a public forum meeting and meeting people face to face. Wants you to go online and read it, and nobody can rebut it. Also, too, Mr. Zoller, I feel, has backdoored this county and Vigo County because of his expertise with the state. He knew all the ins and outs prior to this coming public and had all of his ducks in a row. He and his partners had all their ducks in a row to keep us from fighting it. And I find that very underhanded, and cowardly, to say the least. Lastly, they were saying that there was plenty of test wells done, that there's not any problem with leakage or anything else out there. Within even a few hundred yards, there was mining, there was explosions, hundreds of thousands of pounds of TNT to loosen coal up during coal mining time out there. They've even had a pond that drained itself after the coal mining explosions because it opened up the earth and drained the pond. And can they guarantee by 100% that there's no fracturing or voids caused by the mining out there? I have not seen anything of any kind. And with that, I'll close. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Bohannon, Universal. Can I play a recording?
I don't know, depending on what it is. Is it, I don't, ask our attorney, I don't know.
There's no prohibition.
But please explain what it is quickly.
This is not
a scam. Here's what you can.
It's Nylon Gupta stating,
Can you explain what it is? Can you just explain what it is?
it's Nylon Gupta telling us at the very first meeting that if we don't want it, they won't build it. The very first meeting. I want everybody in here to listen to it, and I want it for the record at a commissioners meeting.
So you can send it to us and we can put it somewhere.
I still want people that's on YouTube, you know, that don't have Facebook, to listen to it.
Right.
Okay, that was the very first meeting. That's a huge lie for the very first meeting. I mean, he knew when he said that that was a lie. So where did we go from there? How many other lies were we told? I mean, he stood right up there in front of all them people and told us, if you don't want it, well, we ain't gonna build it. And we got it on video. Now we got it on the record of the commissioners. The other thing is, I always understood that the federal government and the state government was to protect the rights of the citizens, not take them away. So we as citizens, this ain't over. Even with this, we got to start watching what's going on. And what was the other thing? I probably forgot it. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, it's one of the dumps is about a mile west of me. So, you know, they said that they're not going to gain anything. There's no gain from the carbon, all right?
Closing comment.
So they're going to make money off their ammonia, and then they're going to dump everything on us. All their waste is going to come to us to help pay for everything. So, and also, I read last night where they can take that money that they get from our federal government and use it to sue us. So, we have connections that we've made since we started this a year ago that has special money set aside for counties being sued. So, as a participant of concerned citizens, we're offering help in a big amount to help this county fight this. And there's other monies we can get to do also. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Susan Strokas. I just want to let you know a couple bills.
Senate Bill 442. That was 2019. I think you should take a look at that. It talks about before any condemnation can take place, they have to get 60% of the storage space in FIGO and Vermilion County. So do take a look at that one. That was 2019. House Bill 1209 was in 2022. It basically gave every other county 70% storage. We think that violates our civil rights because you cannot name a company in a bill, put their address in there, and treat every other county different. That may be a civil rights issue right there in itself. And they have tread on you guys. There were meetings, private meetings, back in 2019. I do know this. I have proof of this. This is in the Terre Haute Council. There were meetings. There were a few people there. The mayor was there. I don't think you guys were involved in that at all. So you might check your records back to see what minutes and what meetings took place. The problem is they try to have meetings where it's not like all of you, because it has to be a public meeting. They'll pull a couple aside. It becomes not a public meeting, and then there are no minutes, which I feel is disingenuous. House Bill 451, they keep saying we ought to be so thankful. We get paid 40% cash rent, right? It's like $100 and some dollars, pennies for our acres. And also, it talks about who owns the rights of this poor space. It is us, the surface owners. And so I do agree with some of the comments. I do not want this. I do not want them putting their waste on my ground, because they went to the lawmakers. They spent 8 years here, and most of that time is working with lawmakers, lobbyists, and giving campaign donations to these people to get these bills passed. And I tell you, if that's the way it all works, I feel like, should I go over there, hire some lobbyists so I can go buy my fertilizer at their plant and say, I only want to pay you $100 for all the fertilizer I need? Because that is what you're doing to us. And I do feel like, in my heart, you guys have to be good people. I feel the majority of people in the United States are good people. I feel like you have lost your moral compass. I don't understand this, Mr. Sellers. Just a couple more things. There was something in the Indiana Capitol Chronicle.
Close your comments, please.
Okay, Mr. Rimson was talking about engagement. It's not our fault. They don't want to engage. That is not true. You promised weeks and weeks, if not months, of meetings. You have held private meetings. We have not been invited. That's disinformation. And Mr. Zeller, you talked about trust. How do you build trust? Open, honest, not disingenuous, deceptive. There are not 18,000 wells in Indiana like this, and there's not 44,000 wells in Indiana or Illinois like this. These are Class 6 wells, and we do know the difference of that.
Time.
Change your website, put the actual facts out.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We're almost done.
If I could follow up on Susan's, would Greg or Paul, would you want to come up? I have a question for one of you guys. If one of you would be willing to come up here, or Pete, any of you guys, I guess. I'll take any of you. I'm sure you guys have listened to a lot of these concerns today, just like I have for months, days, years, and they're valid concerns. My question to you guys, we've talked about, you don't want to be, not disingenuous. Earlier you talked about wanting to work with the county. And I think one thing these citizens out here, including myself, and I know we've kind of pushed away from this since that first meeting with Nolan where he had said, we're not going to do this, or we're not going to do this here if you don't want it. Will WVR commit to some sort of public hearing, and even something, as one commissioner, I would offer up this courtroom here. It's live stream, people could watch it. I understand WVR may say, no, just from the fact of, some of these questions, and there may be answers they not like, but I think that could go a long way to the citizens of this county if you would show up, sit down, and take those tough questions and and answer them, or if you can't answer them, let them have a voice to do that. So that's my question to WVR today. Maybe you guys can't answer that, but that's what I would like to ask.
Well, I can at least say that, we have presentations for small groups of people, because we realize when you get people who are never going to support this, I mean, it's just like, the work I've done for the state. I know when people are never going to change their mind. So as long as you all can produce something where we can play a little bit of a video, explain the science behind it, provide factual information.
Yeah,
Respectfully.
Yeah, I think my idea would be you guys sitting up here in these chairs, and the public would be at that podium asking questions, and you could utilize this. But my thought is, unlike maybe at the university, the county could control. We have deputies, we have security here. If it does get out of control, we can control that. But I do think if you guys would be willing to offer that, I mean, actually have a Q&A with them, actually, of some type of discussion. And I understand there's people out here that are going to say, and even me say, I have strong concerns with this, the science, this and that. But I believe in these citizens out here that I think if you sat it, because I mean, have you had anything since that Universal Town Hall where there's been a direct dialogue with a large group of people?
Let me interrupt here.
Nope.
I called and contacted you all about having a public meeting at South Main High School. That was all set up. We had the ground set up, everything approved 3 days before. You guys called and canceled that. And that attempt, I appreciate what you said, but that attempt has been made. To me, that kind of shut down the door on a lot of stuff very fast. I believe that out of due respect of the county officials and asking for that, I thought that was the minimum. And you guys canceled on me. Number two is I talked with the EPA the very first meeting they had in Terre Haute, and address the issue of why aren't you, as far as EPA, addressing this also in Vermilion County? And I couldn't get them to do it. And I'm thinking, so we're not important. What's saying is we're not important in this conversation, and that's the way, the attitude and direction that went there was very, very negative and overlooked. Like our what we have, our part here is overlooked, and we're not important. I think. And that really set a bad tone, and EPA even wouldn't do another one in here. I'm thinking EPA, even them, as far as the nation, the federal government would not do it. And now you, as a state level, wouldn't do it. So it's just bad PR.
Yeah, let me answer your question directly. I don't make the decisions like what you're asking, but I can say this. In all the meetings I've had in the state legislature, and with the federal EPA, the safe drinking water. There is probably some answers that, again, I say they've been asked and answered and they're on our website, but there's a lot of people who are responsible for this, both at the federal and state government. We're a company and we hire the best in the business. So you read Baker Hughes is going to do the wells. We're about to make other announcements. But if I can have, enough, let's say, of the experts, because again, we're not going to drill a well. We don't drill a well.
Yeah.
We will have the best in the business come and do that. So if we can arrange something, I'd be happy to work with you individually so we don't have to get a public meeting to discuss. So I know, Tim, you're always saying, I don't want to ever talk to you without a public meeting. But it's hard to negotiate what we're going to do that would satisfy.
Well, I think at the minimum, I think at the minimum these citizens want a public meeting. I think the fact that Nolan said that in the beginning, I think, and I think just from that aspect, and I don't care if you have experts sitting up here with you guys, but I think WVR owes it to the citizens to at least sit up here and take the questions, take the heat.
Let us take this back to our team and talk about how we can best do this.
Because maybe it's not here. Maybe it is like Tim suggested. Maybe it's at South Vermilion, North Vermilion, at a bigger venue. But I think at the minimum, as a private company, I know you don't have to do it. But when you talk about wanting to work with Vermilion County, I think that's a minimum that you guys could do for us.
Yeah, I think the key is just figuring out how to do it in a way that's going to be constructive and and that will
Beneficial to you.
that will get the right information to people.
Yeah. Well, I want to
I
give.
mean, frankly, all the crosstalk and people wagging their fingers in our faces is not conducive to an open and frank dialogue.
Yeah, well, and I agree, there needs to be some decorum, I agree to that, there needs to be decorum, there needs to be a place where people can ask questions, you can answer them, but I mean, actually, answer those questions. If they're telling me that they haven't got an answer, I would like to maybe get that real answer, whatever that is, and I don't know what that is,
Yeah.
Well, let us take it back, but I want to kind of stress this idea that when you're talking about the safety of the well, that is an EPA permit. And we spent 3 years and a lot of money to show that this is the right place for it. So, we're not the ones who grant a permit. That's a federal permit. The same way with the state authority, they want to see this played out because we need fertilizers in this region. So I can't promise for all those people, but remember, we don't have the authority. We're granted authority from the federal and the state government. And again, I know you all are upset that it's not going to be a public vote, but we don't build any infrastructure, roads, pipelines. Nothing gets built with a local election. That's just not how.
I would appreciate it if you guys could follow up with that and let us.
But I don't want to promise something I can't deliver.
I understand,
I will say that I can come.
Yeah.
So, I do this work part-time.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to come and answer questions, and I'll pull up our frequently asked questions. It's there. I mean,
Can we go on with the next person?
all right, well, but again, I can call you individually, but I can't.
Or an email, whatever works. I mean, just let me know what you guys can do, if you can
You all are
do.
represented, I'll try to make sure
Or
the
John.
lawyer gets it, so I don't, let's say, go off the reservation.
Yeah,
So,
I understand.
all right.
RJ, you did send a letter of support this project, correct?
That was several years ago, Tim, as did the mayor of Clinton, as did economic development. And Tim, I know you've done this multiple times to try to, make me look bad, especially.
It's fact.
Hey, Tim, let me finish what I'm saying, okay? People sitting out there know this, that I did sign a letter of support several years ago, and I rescinded that letter of support. And Tim, I know you're doing this because the election's tomorrow, and you're trying to drum up people to, do that, and that's wrong.
It's fact.
That's just wrong. Economic Development signed this, and Mayor Clinton signed it, multiple people signed it, and multiple people rescinded it. Are you going to say that I rescinded it as well?
No.
That's a fact. Are you going to say that?
Yeah, you rescinded it.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for actually saying the second part of that.
So, go ahead.
Clayton Sanquinetti. So,
Second time.
yeah, second time. I was here the last meeting and I had to leave, but they were talking about the test well that they drilled, and that was at their plant site. That's 7 or 11 miles from where they're actually going to be putting this. It's not had the dynamiting, the digging, all that stuff that fractures the earth and all that good stuff. So that just one thing that isn't really a good, reliable piece of information. Another thing is that, back to their wells, there's only 2 Class 6 wells in the United States, Archer Daniels Midland, look it up. There are only 2 in existence, and they are currently shut down because they are leaking. Okay, so look into that. If you look up at the north end of the state right now, BP is paying landowners by the metric ton of what's shoved underneath their ground in a dump. Okay, they're not paying $140 an acre for surface area. This is metric tons. This is pore space, so it should be measured way different than that. The Vigo County Court, that's a violation of my civil rights, I believe, and then the other one is that all counties in the state of Indiana should be created equal, and that's another violation of the Indiana Constitution, however you want to put it. I worked hard all my life to have what I have, and for somebody to come in and pay politicians to write and author their bills and pay lobbyists and pay all these people in excess of $1 million is dirty money, and they're going to have blood on their hands, and they should be condemned from Vermillion County.
That's all, thank you.
Penny Carpenter, taxpayer, second time up to the podium. Again, I'm going to say, we have Gupta at the first meeting saying if we didn't want it, he wouldn't come to Vermillion County. He also said that in a phone call that I have recorded, that I'm willing to put out there on the web for everybody to hear, that he said he would not come to Vermillion County if the citizens didn't want it. That's what we're asking. He said he wouldn't come, we don't want him.
What is his position with the company?
He's the president of WBR, owner. Yep, he's the man that makes the final decision,
Okay,
so.
thank you. I just want clarification on that.
Hi, Cindy Pyle, Vermillion County resident. That is at the 8:41 meeting, that is minute 26 and 20 seconds. Or I'm sorry, 26 minutes and 40 seconds, where Nalan Gupta says, if you do not want, or do not assume we will force something here that you do not want. Okay, so there's that. And I was just wondering if the bill that they had passed, where it grants the owner the pour space, is that so they can walk away after there's a problem and go, oh, well, you own the property, now you're left to deal with the whatever consequences and the expenses.
And he was paid to take it, so.
Yes, and he has also stated in that 8:41 meeting, at minute 56 and 22 seconds, Betsy Roberts says, it's a bill you had passed and paid for, and Nolan's response was, for sure. And next to that, he says, I know what I passed. Okay, so they are coming in and bulldozing the state and the county. I firmly feel that our constitutional rights have been violated, forcing us to go to another county to go to court if we need to is not right. Yes, I'm upset. This has gone on too long. It's crazy. They promised us that if we didn't want it, they wouldn't build it, and that's where I'm at. We do not want it. Thank you.
Anybody else closing?
May I add one more thing? I'm sorry, I did. I'm so upset. Is there any way we can put into the ordinance where it says that they have to have the 60% of the pour space owners' signatures? Is there any way we can put into the ordinance that we have a third party to verify, or even you guys or someone to verify, not just take their word for it, because we know what their word stands for. Someone to actually verify that 60% of the people have agreed to this. We need solid proof. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, will you place that request to the zoning, what you
Sure.
just said?
Sure.
Appreciate it. Okay, Penny?
Donald Bohannon, and you asked him a question about the meeting at South Vermillion, and he never answered it. I'm pretty sure that the plant of theirs had an explosion 3 days before that, and they just didn't want to show up. Because they knew that was going to be the talk of the conversation.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Anybody else want to? We're getting done here. Limit your comments to one comment, and I can't. You need to get out of here, get this done. That's my limit.
I got just a couple things. Name's Bill Wilson. And I'm not gonna say anything, get me in trouble.
I'll be your help.
The 1,200 pounds pressure that we're talking about, I think that needs to be changed. That's boiler pressure. I was boiler operator, welder. There's a lot of welders in here, pipe fitters. We know about pipe. They don't know about pipe. You cannot run that carbon out there in the country in this pipe. Anyway, I gotta say something else. I can't call him Mister.
Yes.
But he doesn't know about the mineral rights. He says they're a meeting, the mineral rights are this deep in the ground. Well, he's wrong. They're 580 foot up in the air out in the country where I'm at, and they go to the center of the earth. I got 3 pieces of property, and they are not gonna mess my mineral rights up. And I should have wrote all this stuff down. But anyway, the boiler pressure needs to be changed. 2,100 pounds pressure they're wanting to do is tested over 3,000 pounds, and the pipe that went to work will never work. And I know there's something else I was gonna say, and I can't remember. But anyway, this has got to be stopped, and I'm so glad we got a lot of smart people with us. Terre Haute is nothing like you people. Appreciate every one of you.
Thanks, Bill.
We gotta figure a way to get them on board soon. Thank you very much.
One more comment, we're gonna gavel us out, we gotta stop here. You're the last one.
Just quick.
That's all right, you guys?
Y'all, Jack's Walls, y'all have heard about, we don't want it, they won't be here, so I won't go there. But then they stood there and we asked them, why did you pick this area? And they said, there wasn't that many people around here at the time. We wouldn't think we'd have that much pushback. And ain't that a heck of a thing? So then I got 99.6 acres, and they say the plume goes under it, okay? They say if it goes over here and it happens to go on my property, that's bananas. And, you know, we bought the ground. It would be like me driving my truck around their yard, you know, just keep driving around there. Hell, why not? They can do what they want to do. So we're all frustrated. We can't believe what's going on. We can't believe that the higher ups, you know, in the state is risking any of this stuff that's going on. It's crazy. And, you know, we're not going to, if we don't have water, you're not going to have water, Terre Haute's not going to have water, and so on. It just, who would risk that? It's insane. But we're all, I better go before I say something. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna say thank you all for attending today. This is the People's Court. You have a right to come and say what you want, but we do have to control it. And hopefully I wasn't rude to any of you, and neither one of us up here was, but it's part of the system that we have here in America. You have a free voice. Thank God we still have it. And what you continue to remember, that's the way government's supposed to work. It don't always work the way we want, but here at the local level, we as commissioners and the councils, this community in this county, are going to make sure it's run right. And so we thank you for coming, thank you for attending, and if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, there's an empty chair up here, you're free to sit up here and talk to me. So, any other closing comments from commissioners?
Motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for attending.
Some documents to sign, so we take breakfast by